Chapter 29. Between Mountains and Shadows. The wind dragged dust along the road as Dren walked a few steps ahead, consulting a small map folded into quarters. Ether soared above the trees, tracing wide circles over the pine canopies. Kyle and Lyanna followed behind in silence. Several days had passed since they had parted from Alden before the gates of Cara Dûm. Days stretched longer than expected by the decision to avoid the mountain pass where they had been attacked by the Virkeths. "From here," Dren said, tucking the map into his jacket pocket, "we head southwest. If nothing unexpected comes up, we'll reach the tower in 2 or 3 days." Kyle let out a relieved breath. "So far, things have gone fairly well," he said, trying to sound casual. "With a bit of luck, we'll get there without any trouble." Lyanna glanced at him, knowing perfectly well he was speaking as much for her as for himself. His nerves, though quiet, were obvious. "Thank you," she said sincerely, "for coming with me and for trying to calm me." Kyle tilted his head, never breaking stride. "It's the least I can do. I understand how you feel." He fell silent for a few seconds before continuing. "I still think about Kalor, about how I left him alone that day in Rivenshade. If I'd been with him, maybe—" "Kyle," Lyanna interrupted gently, "maybe none of us would be here now. You can't carry that forever." He pressed his lips together. She reached out and lightly touched his arm. "You did everything you could, and now you're here helping me find Selenia. That means more than you think." Dren turned his head slightly without stopping. "Very touching," he said with a sly grin. "But if you're going to cry in each other's arms, at least wait until we make camp. You distract me, and then I end up guiding us straight into a swamp." Cal rolled his eyes. Lyanna shook her head, though a small smile tugged at her lips. They kept moving. They crossed the final stretch of the Thalen Range a day earlier than expected, thanks to traveling without a caravan. Avoiding the Carvath Dûm Pass had cost them time, but it had also spared them death. Now they were halfway between the crossing of Valor and the Tower of the Ancient Mages, following a forest path where light barely managed to filter through. The air smelled of resin. The silence was deep, and Lyanna, though she did not say it aloud, felt that every step brought her closer to, or farther from, Selenia. At the far end of the kingdom, Alden walked alongside Boren's caravan as the road descended into a broad valley. Doran was to his right, Sarah to his left. Luthera trotted behind, testing the wind. In the distance, the mountains seemed to open into a fan of stone terraces that rose like gigantic steps toward the summit. And there stood Thar-Zul, a city so vast it looked as though it had been carved directly from the heart of the mountain. Stone bridges linked entire levels of dwarven structures, clinging to the walls like nests of rock. Great chimneys rose everywhere, spewing columns of dark smoke that spread across the sky like veils. Alden stopped for a moment, awestruck. "All that smoke?" he asked. Boren let out a proud laugh. "That, lad, is music to any smith's ears. Those are the forges of Thar-Zul. The finest weapons and armor in history have been made here. Every true craftsman has learned in this city. They even say several of the ancient relics were forged here." Alden felt a shiver run through him. His thoughts drifted for an instant to Hearthglen, to the small workshop where he had helped repair horseshoes, tools, and nails. It was such a small world compared to this, and yet nothing had ever made him feel more alive than watching metal melt beneath the hammer. "I've never seen anything so large," he admitted. "Because nothing else is," Boren declared. "Thar-Zul has no equal." The caravan reached the main entrance, an immense arch guarded by 2 statues of dwarven warriors. Soldiers signaled them to halt. "Name and origin," one ordered. Boren stepped forward. "Boren Haldrum, master merchant of the House of the Grey Anvil. These humans are my escort. We carry an important commission destined for the smiths of King Durin Hramson." The guard extended a hand. Boren handed over sealed documents and, along with them, a pouch of coins. After reviewing them, the dwarf nodded, returned the papers, and raised his hand to let them pass. "Welcome to Thar-Zul, 'cause no trouble and you'll have none." Alden swallowed. The city roared around them, hammers striking metal, steam hissing from stone conduits, the rough voices of merchants, and the constant clamor of a million unseen sparks. And yet many turned to look at them, at him, at Sarah, at Doran. A human, an elf, and a half-dwarf newly arrived in a city where humans were a minority and elves did not exist at all. Borin turned back to the group. Best we find lodging at an inn. I'll try to secure an audience with His Majesty. Let the protocols run their course. Alden nodded, though his mind was already elsewhere. On the acts of Durvak, on his destiny, and on the uneasy feeling of not knowing what had become of Kale and Lyanna. Ether wheeled sharply in the sky. His shrill cry cut downward like a blade of sound. Lyanna stopped short. Something's wrong. Her eyes shimmered faintly, her vision intertwined with the hawks, and for a moment she felt the wind from above, the animals' racing heartbeat, and the unsettling presence moving through the trees. We're surrounded, she said. Men. Dren clicked his tongue. Wonderful. If they're bandits, we're finished. Run! They didn't wait for a second order. All three bolted down the path, leaping over roots, ducking under branches. Shadows began to emerge from the trees. First 2, then 5, then 10. Hooded men, some with weapons drawn, others carrying ropes meant to snare. Arrows started to fall around them. Don't stop, Dren shouted. There's a river ahead. If we reach it, we can get away. Cal ran in front, sword already drawn, though he knew he couldn't use it at full sprint. Lyanna ran beside him, breathing hard, fear pounding in her chest like a drum. The river flashed into view between the trees, a silver glimmer amid the undergrowth. But they didn't reach it. Men burst out from both sides, cutting them off. Some leveled drawn bows. Others raised swords and improvised axes. There were too many. Cal lifted his weapon, ready to face them, even knowing he had no chance. Don't be an idiot, Dren whispered, stepping between him and the attackers. There are too many. One man advanced from the opposing group. A dark cloth covered half his face, and his stride was confident, almost relaxed. Dren raised his hands, trying to smile. Good. Afternoon, he said uncertainly. May we speak to whoever's in charge? I'm a guide. These two pay well. Could be an interesting arrangement. Kyle and Lyanna stared at him, incredulous, unable to tell whether he was improvising, lying, or betraying them. The hooded man took 2 steps forward. Dren lowered his hand slightly. Kale set his jaw. Lyanna held her breath. The very air seemed to stop.